Hi, and welcome to part 2 of our freelancers and interdependent consultant sessions. So we're really excited to have Ben Johnson along today. And what we're going to do in the next 35 minutes or so is to actually take you through Ben's manifesto and introduce you to the world of pricing as well. So we're at CIPD Central London, and we're one of 7 branches across London. And Charlie and I are 2 of the 90 volunteers that are delivering events all across London, particularly online this year. And CIPD Central London, we're looking at 4 key areas this year. So we're looking at well-being, ED&I, reward, and this is the 4th and probably our most important strand, which is supporting freelancers and consultants at this really pivotal time as well. So as he said, this is one of 4 sessions that we're running. So our last session that we ran was how to create products and services customers want. We actually brought in Phil Chantry, who's an expert on there, and you can actually see the video we produced on the CIPD London YouTube channel. We've got a specific channel put aside for that as well. So today's subject is all about pricing and profit. We've done a lot of research to actually find some really good speakers on each of the subjects, and to say that we looked across the world to try and find a speaker that's got really good knowledge on pricing, but also really importantly has a really ethical and philosophical approach to pricing as well, was really important to us. So when we started to see particular recordings of Ben sharing his manifesto, some of the principles, seeing some of his commercial experience that he's developed over the years as well, we were really keen to bring him on to the webcast and also to run the session. So the session we're running is actually on December the 2nd. It's at 9:30, and if you actually want to get your tickets, it's on the CIPD Central London Eventbrite site, and you can just click the tickets there, and tickets are free. And we're really looking forward to seeing you there as well. So this brings us to the main format for today. So Ben is dialing in from Brighton today, and what we're going to do is just ask Ben just to introduce himself. So I imagine, Ben, when you spoke to your careers teacher when you were 16 after your GCSEs, you didn't agree that being a pricing expert was your chosen career path. Was it a little bit more complicated than that, was it?
Yeah. Hi, Garen. Hi, everybody. No, I think that I don't remember having a conversation with anybody where we were talking around kind of advising on pricing, where that would be a kind of outcome. In fact, I don't really remember having any useful conversations with any careers advisor either, but I guess that's a separate conversation. My route here, my journey here, sort of a little bit accidental. I'm a sort of, I guess, an entrepreneur would be the kind of term. So I've been involved with setting up a number of businesses over the last 25 years. A couple of those businesses I've kind of created and then sold, and then other businesses been involved with, which have kind of which have gone nowhere. So I guess the kind of mix of those things, but I guess the kind of common thread, of course, money is a sort of hugely important thing, needless to say. It's something which, it's essentially the oil which allows our organizational wheels to spin. And the way that we get money into our organizations is by the prices that we charge. And through a kind of whole series of kind of successful and unsuccessful trials and errors, essentially, around kind of playing with pricing and trying to understand what's happening with customers and clients on the other side of the table when we are trying to get them to buy us. It kind of sort of sparked a whole kind of series of a kind of curiosity, really, to kind of understand, well, what's kind of going on with money? What are we, what stories do we bring, which kind of get in the way of prices that we want to charge? And what role does price play in making it easier or harder for clients to buy what we do? So that I'm sitting here today talking to you about this, like I said, is a bit of a kind of accidental journey, more a kind of byproduct of having sort of experimented, sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, with different ways of kind of making it easier for clients to buy what we do.
Brilliant. And just a little bit of a disclaimer here, because obviously one of the things that Charlie and I are both consultants ourselves. So to just experiment to see if your methodology works, I did actually try one of your tactics with one of my clients the other day. So one of the things, I get approached to work with charities quite a lot, and I find pricing them quite challenging because obviously I'm really aware that they've got very limited funding. Obviously what we deliver is very useful for them, however just very difficult to try and sort of price it right, and just where you kind of like they're kind of the price that you charge is equals to the value that you create and the time that you give as well. So I actually used your options approach with them and gave them different options for the first time, and it was really interesting in terms of the outcome as well. So we gave them like a bronze, silver, and a kind of gold solution in terms of pricing, and give them a comparison, and they went for
the middle.
The gold.
They went for gold. That's a win.
I know. So they're really happy because they have had a really good discussion. They kind of know all the services that they're getting as well. So I just wanted to insert that at the beginning, just to say that it does really work as well. And obviously we're joined by Charlie as well. Charlie, just a quick word. How long have you been running your business, and what's your sort of relationship with pricing?
Yeah, I've only been running my business for a year and a half now, just coming up to a year and a half. And actually, funnily enough, I tried a similar tactic as well. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had the feedback yet on whether or not that client wants to go ahead. I think what really struck me when we initially had a conversation with Ben before was that clients have nothing to frame your services, or don't usually have something to frame your services against, and particularly in benefits, which I specialize in. It is a hard, it is something where people either have never had a benefits consultant before, or have tended to be with the same consultant for a long time. So it is important actually to give clients an idea, I guess, of what, the really kind of full service looks like, and compared to what the basic services look like as well. And so, I found that quite a good guide, and it was actually quite useful for myself in determining how my products and services work.
Great. So we thought we can't have you on unless we've actually tried your methodology. That was
well, that is a level of commitment to interviewing which kind of far exceeds the norm.
Yeah, that's why we have to be very careful in terms of who we invite, in case we have to take on huge challenges. So I guess what I wanted to do is, you produced like a manifesto which has got 10 points on it. And what I wanted to do is, Charlie's got some questions for you as well, but just picking out some of the things that really stood out for us when we were reading it is, I think the first thing, and a lot of things, but particularly that a lot of the people who are actually going to be watching this video actually provide things like professional services, is your first step on the manifesto, which is that time does not equal money. Can you just expand on that a little bit, and what that might mean for people that might be orientated to actually naturally provide things on a time basis?
So I guess there's a few different, with all the points on the manifesto, there's a few different kind of things behind it, if you like. And what we're really talking to in the time does not equal money. I guess you can think about this in the running of your own businesses, and anybody listening will be true. What actually is a client buying from you? They're not buying time. Like, they're not saying, good, I need time from Garen today, so I'm buying time from Garen. They're buying some expertise. They're buying change, really. I think somebody had a really useful quote, which is that clients only buy one of two things. They buy good feelings, and they buy solutions. And in the solutions, of course, what we mean by that is they want something to change. They are in this state and they want to get to that state. And the reason they're buying you is because they believe that you can help them make that transition. You can help them make that change. And the other thing around that, the kind of the feelings, mustn't kind of underestimate that. I know kind of Charlie was sort of talking about having a new thing, trying to displace or kind of persuade clients that this is to experiment with you or whatever. Actually, the role of good feelings in a client choosing you is really, really important. But anyway, without getting too distracted by that, it's just making the point that actually the thing that clients are not buying your time. Clients are buying the change. They want something different, whatever it kind of might be. Whether it's, I guess, in the kind of specific context of the work that lots of your kind of members would work in, there is a specific change that they are buying for their workforces, for their companies. And really knowing and understanding the change that your clients and customers are buying is critically important, not just in terms of getting to the right price, but being able to provide good service. So the more time that you spend understanding that it's not time that you're selling, or more correctly, it's not time they're buying, the more time you spend understanding that, the more time you spend understanding the change that they're really buying. And when you understand the change that they're really buying, you are on the way, like I say, both to providing better service and also on the way to starting to price around a different metric, because the fact that people sell time is just is a laziness thing, and it's just a kind of prevailing mistake. It's kind of based on really old ideas which actually go back more than 100 years, and it's not the realm that we operate in. People are not buying your time, they're buying your expertise.
Well, I think that leads quite well to my first question. So I'm guessing sort of pricing by time is something that businesses get wrong about their pricing. Is there anything else that businesses tend to get wrong with their pricing?
I think that businesses get a lot wrong with pricing, but I guess one of the things I would say is that, I'm not sort of sugarcoating this. Pricing is a complicated thing, and do they get it wrong with pricing? I think one of the main things that businesses get wrong with pricing, and this is true, I think, for sort of freelancers, independents, consultants, and large businesses, is all of those kind of entities spend too much time thinking about themselves and not enough time thinking about who's on the other side of the table. And one of the key kind of ideas to try and get people to think about is pricing outside in. So it's not about you or how much time it takes or what you're doing or any of those kind of things. It's about the people on the other side of the table. And when, whether you're a big business, whether you're a kind of a sort of one person band or whatever, too much time we spend thinking about, well, how much time is it taking me to do this? Or what do I need to do this? All you're really thinking about is yourself. The more time you spend walking in the shoes of the people who are buying your products, your services, the more value you'll provide and the more you will earn, essentially. So, the selling time is a thing I'd say that they get wrong. But the main thing that they get wrong is that they don't spend enough time thinking about who's buying and why they're buying. Is probably one of the big mistakes that companies make.
And I guess because I've been doing proposals for about 22 years now, and when I read it in the manifesto, I was like, you've actually articulated one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned, which is the idea of pricing slowly. I think often when we actually engage with a client, we don't actually know exactly what we're getting ourselves into just yet, do we? Haven't had a chance to do a diagnostic or whatever as well. What was it for you that stood out that made it one of your manifesto points, and what are some of the examples of how that can be effective?
I think like that. The example you gave is a sort of clear sort of example where that happens, but also particularly, and I guess it's particularly relevant for a lot of the people who you're talking to. We're talking to in the interview today. If you work as a sort of one person band or kind of independent consultant or freelancer or whatever, what tends to happen is you'll have a conversation and some people will push for price really quickly. The people you're speaking to, just give me an idea, just give me a ballpark, and it's like, of course there's a lot of pressure at that point to kind of hold your line. And the thing around pricing slowly is, if you kind of buckle, which of course, and I say buckle, it's maybe an unfair thing because there is a lot of pressure in that moment. If you succumb, might be a better way of putting it, and you do throw a price out at that point, to what you're talking about, actually you have no idea. You have no idea of context. And one of the other things is, the kind of perennial problem, which then people will sort of talk to and will come up. Nobody, of course, wants to tell you what their budget is, right? Or 99.99999% of the times, people will not want to tell you what the budget is. So, from your point of view, if you're putting together a proposal, you're kind of working on very limited information. But it is really fundamentally true that actually, if the quicker you do succumb to the question, give me a ballpark, what you earn is going to be lower, essentially. The longer you are able to, the more you're able to understand, the more you're able to engage, the more you're able to kind of learn, the higher the price ultimately will be. And so really what we're really interested in is how do you equip people with the kind of tools and techniques and approaches that allow them to kind of understand more, which means that they can get to a place where ultimately the price will be higher. But the kind of short and simple point is the quicker you provide a price, the lower it will be.
I should make a note of that. Great. And I guess obviously, and other things that you said, which are often quite difficult, because when we did the first session, we asked who's in the session. We had everyone from startup or still thinking about it and about to start up, to ones that have been going for 5-10 years as well. So it's the full spectrum. And I guess you sort of talk about the importance of, saying no more than yes. That's kind of almost counterintuitive for a startup, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is counterintuitive for a startup, and I think there for sure there is some variance in here. There's really what we're sort of talking about in that. I guess there's a few things again to that. Really, what we're talking about is developing some expertise, being known for something, and what kind of tends to happen, and I guess this is less about for pure startups. This is more if you've been in business for a few years, let's say, is a kind of typical thing. What sort of tends to happen with most businesses, particularly service businesses, is you start, your initial wave is pure adrenaline, and that runs for a couple of years, right? So I'm going. Charlie, you can probably identify with this. I'm going. It's hard, it's fast, and I'm just going. It's all kind of adrenaline, all of that sort of energy. Now, of course, that can only take you so far. What will tend to happen is you then hit a plateau point where the energy starts to kind of run out. You're actually approaching a little bit of a burnout, and the mindset that goes with that adrenaline is say yes to everything. I can say yes to everything, just get stuff going. And to an extent, there is, of course, a place for that. But that plateaus because you can't sustain that kind of thing forever. And ultimately, you can't sustain that from an energetic point of view. And also, you can't, that's not about providing value. What we're talking about is getting ever better at your craft, ever refining your expertise, so you're getting ever more useful. Because if we go back to the first thing we're talking about, clients buy solutions and good feelings. So your ability to provide both the solutions and the good feelings is about your developing expertise. And you're never going to develop your expertise if you're saying yes to everything. So you need to kind of bite the bullet and accept that actually expertise comes from kind of refining, honing your craft. And that requires time, it requires confidence, it requires commitment. So you've got to be saying no. I would say more than you're saying yes. Because actually, the more that you do that, the more time there is to developing that expertise. There is a sort of secondary point, which is a little bit kind of flippant. Like, I was never very good at the kind of playground dating scene. But of course, ask anybody who was any good at that, and they will all tell you, being over keen is not a great way of selling anything. We're not attracting anybody by being really over keen. So the use of the occasional strategic no to kind of just lend a little bit of attraction is a really powerful tool.
That's interesting. So would you say that pricing's an art or a science?
I would say that it's a bit of both. So, which of course is the ultimate cop-out, but equally true. It is a lot of art, because actually pricing should be done on a client by client, case by case basis. Because what a project might be worth to you today, Charlie, might not be worth that tomorrow, because it's all about your context and why you're buying at that point in time. And so the more you understand that, the easier it is to kind of price to those needs. So it is art because it works on a kind of case by case, project by project basis. But equally, there is a large part science in there as well. Because a lot of what's happening when we give prices and we give proposals and when clients are choosing really falls into the realm of kind of behavioral science. And so kind of why people make choices around what we do, how we decide things. And of course, this is a very, very well understood and studied science. So, what's happening. So I would say it's very much equal part. It's about exploration, it's about experimentation, but it's equally very much about understanding the science of choice and the science of decision.
And I guess one of the things that really stood out for me on your manifesto when I read it, and I was quite surprised to see it there, was an afternoon nap is not a luxury. Now, that's the bit where you had me on board there. That's just, but I guess just because I have a T-wall, that means I get very little sleep. But how does that sort of come into the whole? Because I think a lot of it about running business is about, there's quite a lot of machismo about it. There's a lot of suffering, and how can you build that into, and how does that influence your pricing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There is loads of machismo. This whole idea that, and I've run businesses, and actually I also ran those businesses and set those up based on the idea that I had in my mind for a really long time was that running a business was like making sausages. Not that I've ever made sausages, but somehow the more what you get out is proportional to what you get in. So the amount of meat that I stick into the sausage machine determines the amount of sausage which comes out the other side. And this broad idea, although I didn't ever articulate it like that, I guess for good reason, this broad idea really kind of informed how I ran my businesses. It was really about kind of effort and endeavor, like getting everybody, all the teams, everybody. This is about how much we do, how hard we push all of the time. And, I think that I came to realize that was complete rubbish, essentially. And, everybody often sort of talks around the Pareto principle, I think it is, the 80-20 kind of rule. And actually, when you start to kind of look at that, you realize actually there is a whole load of truth in there. And whilst we kind of provided, like when I was running my teams, running the businesses, we provide kind of sort of constant effort across all things equally all of the time. And so that requires you to be kind of always on, always working, kind of always endeavoring, essentially. But when you kind of step back and you go, well, actually, there's some things here which are delivering a disproportionate return. There are some things here which are of disproportionate value to our clients and customers. So actually, should we be applying effort equally across all things, or should we have some objectivity and really understand, well, what is the sweet spot of the value that you bring? Where is that real kind of rich point where actually when you do this, you enjoy it most, and partly because you enjoy it most, you're providing most value to your client. The more you can confidently do that, which links to the other points of the manifesto about saying no, more saying no occasionally, and it's okay to walk away from things. Actually, just really focusing in on this kind of point of expertise, this thing that you can do. That's also the most value that you provide. And so to come all the way back to the kind of afternoon nap, I guess, again, there's a kind of few things there. One, if you are working that 80-20 principle so that you know that you're doing the thing which is the sort of sweet spot of your expertise, the sweet spot of your usefulness, if you like, the more you kind of do that, the more valuable your work is. And the more valuable that your work is, the less time you need to spend doing it, because we're not selling time. Is what we're kind of aiming for. We're aiming to, orientate around, we're providing solutions to our clients. These solutions, because we're refining and investing in our expertise, are more and more useful to our clients. And because they're more and more useful to our clients, they're more and more lucrative, they're more and more valuable. If they're more and more valuable, I don't need selling my 8 hours a day from 9 to 5 or whatever it is, because I've been able to provide my expertise, my brilliance, my usefulness in 20 minutes at 9:20. Which then comes to the kind of later thing, well, what's then the right use of my time? How do I want to structure my day? And actually, having an afternoon nap, worked for Winston Churchill, works for me. It's a brilliant way of just recharging in the afternoon. And so I guess it's all just part of this sort of same idea. If you're focused on brilliance, focused on usefulness, and really kind of invest in that and earn proportional to that value that you create, you don't need to be stuck in the kind of never-ending race of, I need to maximize my time, which is what the first point on the manifesto talks about. And as soon as you kind of start to wrestle free from that, you will find you have time to invest in all sorts of things, which might be an afternoon nap for you. It might not be an afternoon nap for you. It might be a learning opportunity. It might be a time to go for a walk. It might be the ability to go to the cinema on a Wednesday afternoon. Whatever it might be, it's just this point and principle. We need to kind of unhook ourselves from this idea that the way we earn money is by providing things between 9 and 5.
Well, as part of our ongoing commitment to researching the methodology of our of our guests, I'm going to try and implement that today. So, and I'll report back on how I get on.
You kind of mentioned that one of your other things was around well-being, and I obviously don't know kind of what you went into there, but this actually how we move through the day is hugely important to our ability to continue being useful to clients, to continue that, that side of things. And actually, we're not being useful to our clients if we're maxing ourselves out in a sort of totally unsustainable kind of input-output way.
And I think a lot of the time with professional services, yes, there are jobs to be done, but we're being paid to think.
Yeah.
And I guess it's allowing ourselves to have that time to think. And there's just that overwhelming research, like once you start going over 42 hours a week, the quality of what you do starts to go down dramatically. It's almost like the law of diminishing returns. So there's quite a lot of thinking behind there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of I think going back to some of the point about timing money, I used to work, I've worked as a consultant, albeit an employed consultant, for a long time. And at least two of those places were large accountancy firms. So I was very, you know, in my mind, it will be, so I've been conditioned, say, to forever think that time is money. And I was lucky when I started this business that I've got a sort of a business partner who you know, has been established for 10 years, doing something slightly different, but been established for 10 years. And one of the things that struck me was all of the places I went, and admittedly they were serving the same market. The pricing was almost identical across the board. And I think my initial, and it's, you know, it was highlighted at the time by my business partner, my initial thought was, right, well, I'm just going to charge 10, 20% less than they do. And he said to me, and I think this is probably common pricing sort of knowledge, he sort of said to me, no, you shouldn't do that. You know, why has your time suddenly become less valuable just because, you know, you've set up by yourself and you're no longer working for this firm? You know, when it comes to setting up, how would you go about calculating your prices? Or are we going back to your points earlier of just saying, like, you know, it really does have to be on that job by job basis? There isn't a way that you can create like a static pricing menu, because in financial services particularly, the regulator, the government, consumer bodies all like us to have like a very clear cut, you know, this is what our prices are. And I really want to be transparent about my pricing, because a lot of the time I can have a client that has very similar problems to clients, but actually when we get underneath it, it's going, you know, the value to them or the cost to me is going to be very different.
Mm. Yeah, so there's a few different things in that. I guess, you know, clearly in a regulated space, right, there are things which you kind of have to do. And that may mean it's kind of more or less possible to kind of work iteratively to have kind of pricing that is developed on a case-by-case basis. I guess the key thing is that what clients want, actually. Clients want to get rid of ambiguity. Right? Nobody likes ambiguity. Nobody likes uncertainty. And whenever we're starting anything, whether it's a business, whether it's a conversation with a prospective client, those things are loaded with ambiguity. They're loaded with uncertainty. And it's bubbling below the surface. But everybody's objective in those instances is just to sort of get those things away. And having clarity around pricing does help get those things away. So I'm not saying you shouldn't have some sort of rolling price thing. But it is kind of worthwhile just being clear about the prices that you have. The example that you spoke about just saying, oh, I'll just be less than everybody else. You know, your business partner is absolutely right. And it's not actually because your time should be worth less because you're not working there. It's just actually that is a hiding to nothing. As soon as you start doing that, you basically are on a one-way road to nowheresville, essentially. And I'll share a very quick story about my experience of that. Very early on in running my last business, which also was a service business, we took a similar approach to the one that you were talking, or you almost did, which is, you know, we met lots and lots of prospective clients and had lots of great conversations. These things seem, you know, each of these conversations seemed to be kind of full of opportunity, full of life, full of potential. And, you know, the conversations would all kind of wind their way around to the same sort of place. You know, what does it cost? How much do you charge? And we took the view kind of early on, because, you know, we were sort of younger and enthusiastic and hopeful and a bit naive, that it was best to not charge very much in order to get the relationship going. The idea, you know, we won't charge very much. We'll show you what we can do. That will be the way to get the relationship going. And so we'd have all of these conversations. We'd meet all of these people. And the conversation would always, like I say, find its way around to the same place. And we would kind of reply at that point, you know, give us a few grand essentially, and we'll show you what we can do, essentially is what we were saying. And time again, these conversations came to nothing. So all of that potential, all that opportunity just seemed to kind of evaporate. And of course, that's a hugely demoralizing thing, because it really feels like you're sort of pushing water uphill. All of this effort, not getting anything back. Until one day in the same conversation, with a client who were a big client. So I knew that, you know, they clearly had money, but same sort of conversation, same potential, same sort of enthusiasm, seemingly kind of full of all of this sort of possibility and opportunity. And as with all the others, conversation winds its way around to how much does it cost, what do you charge? And for reasons I'm not clear about, no kind of plan or design or intent on my part, rather than taking we'll give us a few grand and we'll show you what we can do, I just said it costs 45 grand, 45,000. And they bought it straight away. We were talking about a sort of essentially a creative concept that they would buy. So they bought it straight away, no great conversation, no quibble, just said, great, let's do this. And on that moment, a huge amount kind of shifted for me, really. We'd won a kind of big new client, which was very early on in running the business, which was kind of hugely important, and we had kind of money in. But then the thing that's kind of started to happen from that point forward was just starting to price ever more courageously, ever more confidently from that point onwards, and also trying to understand what was kind of going on. So price is a hugely important signal. So talking specifically to your case where your business partner says, don't do that, don't do that because it's a kind of one-way road to nowhere, the idea of kind of being less. But actually, when we are starting out, and this is kind of difficult, price is a massively important signal. Price is a massively important signal at any point. And the thing that we were inadvertently doing in running my last business, in going low, the reason all of those conversations were essentially coming to nothing is we were sending a signal of doubt. We were saying inadvertently, we're not totally convinced by us because we're effectively asking from you for a favor to get us going. Now, we were never using those words or saying anything like that, but by saying, essentially give us a few grand and we'll show you what we can do, is not confidently going to the market and saying, I've got the solution for you. And so the price that we charge is a hugely important signal. And the idea that kind of less is best is really not helpful by all measures. Price is a hugely important signal, and it talks to a confidence, and it's a confidence, that imbues a confidence in the kind of heart and mind of the person sitting across the table. But it also has a kind of for us, it had a transformative effect on how we felt about our work too. And in having that kind of positive effect, of course, that then becomes symbiotic. So the clients and the customers have that sort of feeling too. So you really kind of change a huge amount by putting your prices up, would be the kind of first invitation that I would have. And I guess just talking specifically to the financial services thing, like you're saying, having clarity around pricing. I'm not talking about it all being a bit kind of vague and sort of opaque and kind of tricks and whatever. Like I say, clarity is important. Transparency is important. I guess a question I might ask of you without wanting to kind of distract too far, where you say you want transparency, like what is the transparency that you are kind of wanting to bring?
I guess perhaps it's wanting clients to feel comfortable that I'm not, as a business that has links, I guess, to the financial service industry, that I'm not pulling the wool over their eyes in some way, that they're not paying, dramatically more than they should for, the value of what they're getting. And there are examples within the industry, many examples within the industry, where people have probably paid out a lot more than they should have done. And so there always feels like you're coming against a bit of a psychology with your customers of them being like, you have a financial services background, you're kind of a greasy insurance salesperson type, therefore this is where it's going to go. And that's something that, again, listening to what you've said today, a lot of that's actually internal, so I've realized when I've been having these conversations that I'm making that assumption immediately that the person opposite me is thinking, you work in financial services, therefore you'd rob your own grandmother, right? And that's definitely not, someone said to me the other day, you run a lifestyle business and it comes back to your well-being point. And that is true. I am genuinely not looking to make significant profits, right? I'm looking to have a income that allows me to do what I need to do. And once I've got that, I'm fine. And that's what I want to project because, that's the kind of, I want long-term stable relationships with my clients. But the difficulty is in my mind, and I might be wrong, but in my mind, a lot of clients come to financial services and think, you're just trying to get as rich quick and as much out of this transaction as you can as possible. And because I don't understand money, because I don't understand what's going on, customers are coming in feeling they're at an immediate disadvantage. So when you ask me what I mean by transparency, it is, I want to be very open about, what they're getting and what that cost is.
No, so I would say, and we could go into this in sort of huge amount of detail. All I would say is that the key things that you said there, this is mainly in my head, right, is hugely important because it is mainly in your head. Anybody who's ever written a proposal, and I bet this is what we true for, you, Garen, me, everybody kind of watching, written a proposal, you've got a figure in there, and you're just about to send it and you go, shit, actually, I'm just going to reduce that figure a little bit. So all you're doing in that instance is negotiating with yourself. And what you're talking about there, Charlie, is this negotiating with myself, this idea that I have about what they are thinking. Now, the idea that I have about what they're thinking, there may be truth in it. And actually, your intent, your orientation to be transparent, to provide something which is of value to them and that they only pay proportional to the value that it holds, is the whole point, right? And actually, the important thing then is your intention, is your orientation, and making it clear. I'm not just talking about ways of kind of duping clients into paying more. My whole thing is, it's about outside in. It's about what is the value that the client sees and pricing to that. Because if what we provide, the client doesn't see any value to it, then they shouldn't pay very much money for it. And I'm not talking about ways that you can magically earn for things which inherently don't have value. My whole guiding principle is, and I believe this will be true for you and for the people who are kind of watching, that actually in the heart of what you provide, there is usefulness, there is value. And all I'm interested in is where that is true, that you have ways of sharing in that value that you create.
I'm quickly coming to the conclusion that engaging in pricing coaching is almost like therapy.
Thank you, Dr. Ben.
we get free consultations, don't we? So just we're going into the last 5 minutes here. So I just wanted to ask one question that was on my mind, and I know that a lot of businesses will be in the same. Is what happens when we've submitted the bid, we've started the work, and as we start to get an understanding of the actual work that's entailed and the demands of the client, sometimes as you start to get contact, sometimes like the equation doesn't feel, or the ledger doesn't feel quite right. It's like it's slightly out of balance. And sometimes it's not necessarily a negative emotion like resentment. It's just that this doesn't feel like it's the right kind of relationship here as well. Is it okay to go back to a client and renegotiate? Can we do that? Is it okay to do it? And how can we do it?
Well, that's a good question. The first thought that was coming up for me as you were sort of just recounting that scenario is, and I guess this links actually to the transparency point we were just talking about. It would feel to me a hugely kind of positive and empowering thing to say to a prospective client at the beginning, before the proposal, before the money is agreed. My concern in these situations is not that we agree something now, we start out, it's starting to feel a little bit wrong. I need to come back to you and say it's not really working, or you need to say something to me about it's not working. Therefore, we have to kind of sort of segment, we have to have a sequence here. And the sequence is, there is a first engagement, which looks like this. And from this first engagement, we get clarity about what comes next. Because, going back to the thing we've spoken about a little bit, everybody just wants to remove ambiguity, to remove uncertainty. And if there is a worry, a danger, a kind of instances where we get into something which doesn't then feel kind of right, I would say it is really difficult to go back, and it depends clearly on the relationship that you have. I'd say it is difficult, and actually probably a bit unfair to the client to go back at that point and do it, because once they've made the purchase commitment, whether they're a company, an individual, or whatever, right, that's done for them. To open that little cookie jar, again, maybe a bad kind of phrase, because obviously cookie jars are enjoyable things, but to open that sort of cookie jar again then is really problematic for people. So if you want to kind of guard against that happening, you need to think about the sequences that are being sold, the engagements that are being sold, that mean there is flexibility kind of built in. And or you need to be better at the scoping and project management, so that there is clarity when you go into something. This is what I'm doing. When something starts to kind of veer off, there is clarity and it is understood that actually this is a veer. This is a new thing. This was not in scope. So that it can justifiably be part of a separate conversation.
That's a really good answer, because I do think that a lot of small businesses and consultants could really benefit from getting good project management skills, to define the scope, and to have recommissioning built into the different stage gates as you go through the different phases as well. So it's not a wasted thing. I guess obviously the challenge is for those that are truly invested in the project, but sometimes I guess it's a case of it's okay to leave clients that you're working with if it's just not a profitable job, isn't it?
Hugely important, and that is kind of one of the points. It's okay to walk away. It might even be the last point on the manifesto. This kind of play. This turns up in all sorts of. If you're working with a client and it's just not working out for you, they don't appreciate the value. They don't appreciate your usefulness. They're not willing to to pay you accordingly. Walk away. And because otherwise they're sucking the lifeblood from you. And your ability to be useful, to be valuable, is about maintaining an energy and an interest and a will and a desire. And if you're working with clients that it's just not working out, cut that relationship away, because it's in nobody's interest. And you don't need to do it sort of, don't do it aggressively, don't do it sort of angrily.
It's not me, it's you.
Exactly, back to the playground dating thing. It's kind of, find them somebody else who is kind of right for them. But it is, it's not even that it's okay to walk away, it's actually necessary to walk away. And the kind of, what that sort of leads to is that when you get sort of bold enough, confident enough to go, actually, this isn't working for me, I am going to walk away. That will create, it creates a space, it creates a vacuum. And into that space, into that vacuum, all of your creative energy will go. And so new things will be born as a result of being confidently walking away from the things which are not working for you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And just in the last couple of minutes, Charlie, do you have any sort of final questions that you wanted to ask Ben while we're here?
Well, I think probably the most important one right now is, do you think COVID or Brexit should affect pricing?
Ooh, best question till last.
Should COVID or Brexit affect pricing? Well, I guess the simple answer, in a way, yes, but not because, and by that I don't mean you should charge less because of COVID or Brexit. If underneath the question is, should I charge less because of COVID or Brexit? No. Should COVID or Brexit influence my pricing? Yes, because fundamental to pricing is outside in. So what something is worth to your client or customer varies on a case-by-case basis. And of course, in some instances, there's opportunity to flex around with this, and in other instances, there's less opportunity. But what something is worth to your client or customer is all about their context. It's all about the immediacy of their problem. And so it might be for some clients that COVID or Brexit is creating a massive problem that you need to help with. Therefore, the value of your service goes up. So if the question is, should those things mean I charge less? Absolutely not, 100% not. But should it affect pricing? Yes, 100%. Because actually the acuteness of the problem may be up, may be down as a result of COVID or Brexit. And understanding the context, understanding the motivation, understanding the pain is everything that pricing is about.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Ben. We really appreciate it. Obviously, we've been greedy. We've asked for 35 minutes and we've taken 45. We just want to say a huge thank you. So somehow you've managed to condense all of your decades of experience into a course as well, haven't you?
That's right. Yes, that's right. Which is really just about trying to help people kind of make the change, because everybody kind of wrestles with this. And actually, the way to kind of make the change is by working through it together as a group. So we kind of have packaged all of that up, and that information is out there. But really, just the interest is just helping people make the change so that they are able to price more confidently and share in the value that they create.
Brilliant. And this teases up really well for the 2nd of December. So obviously Ben will be joining us for the session. So it's going to be a really interactive session. And what we're doing is actually having a chance for you as a consultant, as a freelancer, as an entrepreneur, to actually bring your business into the actual session and to talk it through with fellow consultants and Ben as an expert as well. And I think it's really important to have a community around you as well. It's to get all those thoughts out of your head and start to bounce them off other people that are having similar experiences as well. So we're really looking forward to seeing you. Thanks so much, Charlie. Thanks so much, Ben, for your time. And we'll see you guys on the 2nd of December.
Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed it.